All right. So we're getting going live here. Welcome, welcome. So I am George Miller. I'm your host. I'm here every Wednesday from noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. And I am excited to be, thank you, Jane, talking with you more about using EQ in your career. So I want to see a few things as we're getting started here live. There's a few ways you can engage. Is you can jump in directly on the Zoom. I love it when you do that. I can work with you one-to-one. If you have questions, you can just come off mute, let me know what you're wanting help with. And if you can't do that, if you're listening in, if you're watching on the live stream, you can type your questions into the comment section. And Jane will get those over to me, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. And your questions don't have to do with this topic. If you have something on your heart that isn't being talked about, that's fine. My job is to serve you. Let me know what you need help with. Could be anything from working on your resume, could be anything in interviewing, managing a team, managing up, or your relationship with your boss. If you're coming up for a review, any questions career related are welcome here. So again, if you have questions or comments, type them into the chat or into the comment section, and feel free to join in here directly. I love it when you do, and I can work with you one-to-one. So the topic that we lined up today is building on what we were talking about last week. And that is about how to be more effective. Cool, cool. Thanks for the thumbs up. How being empathetic builds trust and rapport at work. At work, there's always changes happening. We live in a, in a no matter what industry you're in, change is happening at some level. And when that's going on, everybody has a different idea, a different way to approach a challenge, different way to come up with solutions. And when people are not able to communicate their ideas clearly and not able to be understood, a lot of breakdown can happen and things don't get done. And so what we want to look at is, how do we use the stress or the challenge or the conflict? Well, last week we talked about stress, learning how to embrace that with EQ, emotional intelligence. And then this week we're looking at going deeper into empathy and what that takes. And so when you are working on something that's challenging, how can you get inside somebody else's shoes? How can you communicate with them in a way that they're going to hear you better? Well, one of the things is that it doesn't, you first have to get to know yourself more. Because if you think that you are communicating in a way that's going to be more understood by somebody who's different than you, there's a good chance it's not going to work if you're out of touch with yourself. So authenticity is really important when you're up against challenges. And so again, jumping back to last week's topic of stress, embracing that with emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is how are you feeling? What's the anxieties, the concerns, the irritations that you have? And what do they mean to you? And as you can be more conscious and present with the upset that you're having, upset, minor upsets often don't need to be catastrophic here, but with the discomfort, as you can be present with the discomfort and the challenges that you're having, then it's going to facilitate you making deeper contact with your team, with whoever's on your team that you're working with. So that's why we're getting into today. Need a sympathy buddy? Try emotional intelligence. So that emotional intelligence, that awareness of yourself is going to be like a landing pad for other people. It's like an attractive quality. It's you're opening up the gates for people to be more in touch with you and where you're at. So it really starts with that first self-acceptance. And that's harder done than said. I mean, yeah, oh great, accept myself more. What does that mean? So there's certainly a lot of ways to do that. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna get into those at this moment, although we may get there as we continue going with this live stream. But I want to check in with some people and remind everybody who's joining in, there's a few ways that you can engage. I love it when you come in directly into the Zoom meeting and you can come off mute and ask a question, or you can type your question into the comment section. Again, your questions, they don't have to do with this topic. If they do, great, but you don't have to limit your questions to this topic. Well, before I go on, I want to check in with somebody and see, Erica, is there anything that you're wanting to update us on today? And VJ, let us know if there's anything that you're wanting support with. You can always type a question into the chat.
No, nothing for today. Just listening in for now.
Okay, all good. Cool, cool. So empathy, promoting deeper connection and collaboration, and driving positive change in the workplace. When we're so used to our view of the world, and we're not even conscious that we're trying to make that a reality, and that we're kind of pushing that on other people, it can get in the way. So one of the things that you can do in a meeting, if you're going into something where people are not aligned, and there's let's say that you're going into, okay, sounds good, thanks for checking in. If you're going into in a meeting where you have a solution and you're wanting to have people buy off on that, and you need to get your team aligned with you, there's a lot of things that you can do that are going to set you up for success. So one of the key things in emotional intelligence research is that we need our emotions are the thing that actually fuel our decision making. Everybody says, don't make decisions based on emotion. Well, that's a simplistic phrase, and we need to kind of dig into that a little bit more. There's a lot of truth to that, but a deeper truth is that we are all emotional creatures. And so I'm going to be making decisions based on my emotions. It's not like I can't do that. Now, I may have learned my lesson enough times and said, whoa, when I make a knee-jerk decision to something, that has gone wrong enough that I'm going to do something differently now. But even that is me paying attention to my fear. Even that is still using my emotions to make a decision, because I wouldn't even have that data. I would not remember to not make quick knee-jerk decisions to things if I didn't have access to that feeling of fear, of loss, of potential loss, of, oh no, I don't want to repeat a mistake I've made in the past, or oh no, I've heard other people talk about this, and so there's a pain that I want to avoid. Even that requires us being in touch with our feelings. So to not make an emotional decision is really, if we are zooming in on what it means to be human, that doesn't really exist for any of us. We have emotions and we need them. And the research shows that if we're out of touch with our feelings, we're going to make decisions much slower. There's a study where they people who had tumors on the emotional center in their brain were given a whole bunch of tests to see how, they responded to everyday situations, and it took them 5 to 6 hours to even start the test because they had to choose between a blue and a black pen, and they had a really hard time making a decision. 5 to 6 hours. So this idea and this phrase that gets thrown around of, don't make decisions based on emotions. Well, it's just we need our emotions to function. And it's about being more in touch with what our emotions are and using them as valuable data that's really going to help us. So at work, what are the ways that I can connect more with the team? So we're going back to now, okay, we've got an agenda, need a team to take action on these items. If I walk in, oh, let me check. I'll jump back to this story in a moment. But face a lot of situations where you have many solutions or ideas to suggest, but how do I make other people? Oh, perfect. This is right where we're going. Great. Okay, so have a lot of ideas and solutions, but how do you get buy-off from other people? How do you get people to move with what you are seeing as is going to be the thing that works? So an important thing to understand about all of us then is that it takes time for something that's not me to sink in and me make it my own, such that I'm going to want to do something with it. It's just like when we think about creating democracy on the planet. If we go in and, you know, blow a bunch of things up to get people to do things a certain way and say, this is how it is from now on, it doesn't work. You know, every culture, every um, environment of people, every smaller group, and every individual wants autonomy, wants to be authentic to themselves. And so if I'm going into a meeting and I think that just telling everybody, go do this is going to work, I'm probably setting myself up for failure. What one thing that works better is to ask questions. I'm going into a meeting and saying, okay, here's our objective, and here's what I've outlined as the approach that we're going to use to get there. Okay, now tell me what you think about what I've outlined here. What are the things that you think are going to work? What do you think are the things that are going to be trickier? Where do you think we're going to have some snags? And so you include people on this. And then internally, what often happens is that I have to then soothe myself inside because I'm now giving up control because I need other people to help get things done. And so that I have anxiety about that. And I have to understand that I'm having anxiety about that and be able to soothe myself in that moment. In those moments when I am communicating to my team that, okay, I am now taking this out of my control and I have concerns about this. And if I can be clear about that anxiety It's going to help me stop from micromanaging. That's a big issue. It's like, okay, here's the job that we need done, and then I need you to do this. And oh, and here's how I need you to do it. And wait, make sure that you're doing it this way. And da 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 da. See, that's a fear-driven response. And then the teammate that I'm talking to, as I'm trying to show them exactly how to do all this stuff, begins to feel their autonomy less and less. They start to feel more and more like they don't matter, more and more like, why am I even here? And it doesn't work as well. Now, asking them, okay, here's the objective. What do you need to see this through? Are you are you clear on all the pieces of this? And then so now you're entering into a relationship and you're staying present with that anxiety, that fear, but it's not driving you anymore. It's not an unconscious knee-jerk response that you're having. You're now using that fear to really help you pay attention to the relationship with your teammate. It's now you're using that fear and focusing it on the person that you are strategizing with. And you're not focusing it on them as if there's something wrong with them. You're focusing it on the outcomes that you want, and now you're partnering. And you're inviting them and all their feelings, all their anxieties. You're now inviting their anxieties to be focused with your anxieties towards the outcome that you want. But this requires you to be willing to be with your discomfort. And most of us have been raised to avoid our discomfort. So, so this little trick of just knowing this, of knowing, okay, most moments of me being alive and talking with people, I'm going to be feeling some anxiety. This is part of aliveness. This is part of what it means to be alive. Okay, cool. I can work with that. But if I'm criticizing myself for feeling insecure, I put air quotes on that because on some level, yeah, we should all feel insecure. We're all here for a limited time. And if I just focus on like, oh no, am I being insecure? It doesn't help. So, okay, can I use my insecurities effectively? That's a more useful question. And so when we can make this pivot in our brain, when we can shift how we are engaging with our feelings, it has a profound impact in how we navigate our relationships at work, not only at work, but also at home, also while we're dating, also while we're raising kids. So that is the run through one run through of how to use emotional intelligence to be more effective at work. And great. Okay, it sounds like VJ, cool. I'm glad that that's helpful. Because there is the question of I face a lot of situations where I have solutions or ideas to suggest, but how do I make other people buy them? How do I get buy-in from other people? And again, a big part of this is paying the price of a little discomfort up front. So if you are a results-oriented person, you just want to get things done, it's helpful to know that you're actually going to move faster. You're going to get better results if you take time at the beginning of the meeting to allow the group to connect. Because there's other personality styles out there that care more about the social feeling of the group or care about the vision of what's possible. And so all that little chit chat about, how your weekend was or this kind of thing, that you coming into the meeting is like, oh, we got to do this, all that stuff, all that conversation actually helps. It actually helps build a stronger foundation so that when you're coming up in conflict challenges in that meeting, you've now laid the groundwork for people to want to work things through and having an emotional connection to the rest of the team. It's a very important thing to know that when you are driving a project, it's not a bad idea to have some people share things that are not necessarily work related. And you'll see as you start paying attention to this, you'll see in your team meetings, you'll start to see that people are like, okay, we kind of, you know, talked about what we did this weekend, or, we had enough chit chat, we had enough small talk. And we're starting to get anxious now and like we want to get going here. You'll start to notice that. And it's an important thing. Every human, we all, just like we need water and air and food, we need um, social interactions. We need affirmation from other people. Even if it's on Zoom meetings and things, a question or some kind of a response, or on social media platforms all over the place, comments, likes, all that stuff. Isn't that amazing? Like, think about that. That's how much we need affirmation, is that we designed these social media platforms to have thumbs up and heart emojis. And those are like the most to use things. That heart emoji is the number one thing used in emoji land. That is how much every person needs affirmation. And so when you're able to be aware of that and create those little moments of affirmation to happen as a meeting is getting started, as you can, make little jokes or whatever that have people feel seen and understood and affirmed, essentially, it's going to go a long way, and it will help get things done. But okay, so we're getting another, difficult to do that, but definitely going to try. Yeah. Well, VJ, I'm glad you said that, because it might be simple, but it's not easy. I'm 42 years old. I have 42 years of training to be the way that I am right now. So to shift that even 1 degree is a challenge. But again, the investment of shifting 1 degree over the course of even a few months makes a big difference. Thanks, Eric. Good stuff. Looking forward to hearing from you. Take care. So knowing that it's difficult is actually a good thing, is to set realistic expectations and to know, okay, the next time I go into a meeting and I'm going to be more present with my anxiety, and I'm going to sit back and like facilitate a little small talk and, let some of that happen. Just doing it a little more and knowing, God, it's gonna be a challenge for me. That's actually helpful, to be honest with myself about where I'm at in my development as I'm a human being that is continuing to learn and grow. So, BJ, I hope to hear from you maybe in next week or in a couple weeks and just see what that's like for you. What do you learn about yourself as you are sitting with your anxiety more? So this is one of the things, I mean, one of my practices is going into ice cold water and being with the discomfort of that because it trains me. It starts my day that way. So I've already done something that is, physically uncomfortable. And I've had a win knowing that I can be with discomfort. And in fact, I get benefits from it pretty quickly. Okay, cool. BJ, thanks for sharing and thank you for asking your question and kicking us off that way. Yep, if you want, go to the YouTube. Let's drop YouTube channel in there. YouTube channel. And you know what? You should also check out the video on personality styles that's in there. So we'll be putting in more content on YouTube. But check it out. BJ, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, check it out. I look forward to hearing back from you. So when you are being with the discomfort of something, just knowing that it's a challenge and that you don't have to criticize yourself on top of it being a challenge, then you're going to get further quicker. So it's a very helpful thing to know. This is challenging work. Oh, we got another question. So how do you balance empathy with assertiveness and boundary setting to maintain professional relationships and manage expectations effectively? Okay. How do you balance empathy with assertiveness and boundary? Okay. So the way that if I'm a pretty visual person, so I'm going to think about this visually and talk about it that way. So in balancing, um, I am not very good at balancing. Like there are some people like clowns and things who can gymnasts who can balance amazingly well, they could probably stand on a seesaw and like balance themselves perfectly. I might be able to do that, but I'd probably have some movement to it. But I say that just to set up that what's easier for me, it's easier for me to balance when I'm moving. And so if I am skateboarding or surfing, there's movement now happening, and I can do this balancing act with the momentum of what's happening. And it actually makes it easier. And so it's not like I'm ever perfectly balanced. I'm always leaning a little more one way or a little more the other way. And that is the state of being alive. And so if my focus is balance, what ends up happening is it doesn't work. Like if I'm skateboarding and I'm just completely focused on being balanced, okay, am I balanced? I fall off the skateboard. I actually need to be aware of where I'm going, where I'm at, and in that motion, and then I can get the balance down. Then I'm actually balancing. I'm not just thinking about balancing. So balancing assertiveness and empathy. When you have an objective and you brought in boundary setting, um, naming the boundaries up front is a really good idea. If you can do that. And if you haven't named the boundaries up front, then it's a good idea to circle back around and say, you know what? We did not establish operating agreements up front. And I think we need to do that. I think we're gonna be more satisfied and make more progress on this when we have some clear operating agreements. So you can always circle back around and establish the boundaries. So the boundaries then, it's like if you think about the target that you're moving towards, it's like, okay, here's the boundaries. And that way, if somebody bumps up against that, it makes it easier for you to say, hey, remember, we talked about that. That's a boundary. And oh, I totally get why you would want to do that or go in that direction. Right? There's the empathy. And reminder, this is where we're going. And so I need you to get back on track, moving towards what we want, what we talked about. And that's the assertiveness. So you have to be asserting towards something. And the empathy is you allowing yourself to be with the discomfort of like, oh, like I see that person doing something that I would never do at this time in my life. But, I wonder why they're doing it that way. Or maybe I see why they're doing it that way, why they'd want to do it that way. And I get that, but we've got to do it this other way. But by allowing yourself to feel the discomfort of being with them and whatever mistake they might be making, and to remember, oh yeah, I've made my fair share of mistakes. And okay, I get it. And I get that could be kind of embarrassing and then I have somebody telling me, no, we got to do it this way. And I was like, oh no, I thought my idea was good. I thought I was doing it right. And yeah, I get that. That can be uncomfortable. So that when I am able to empathize with somebody, it's like I'm able to feel what it's like to be them in that moment. And it doesn't mean that I have to have ever had that experience, but I can understand feeling hurt. I can understand feeling frustrated. I can understand feeling anxiety. I might not be that exact person and had their exact same experiences or made the exact same mistake or whatever like that, but I get in a general way what it is to be uncomfortable. And allowing myself to feel that instead of trying to push it off and me not feel that discomfort, that's where it usually then will turn out sounding and feeling more like criticism to the other person or unhelpful criticism. Like I'm taking shots at their character. So I hope let me know if that's helpful. If the to the question about how do you balance empathy and assertiveness with boundary setting to maintain professional relationships and manage expectations effectively. So again, that boundary setting part that you asked in that you had in that question is good because yes, establishing boundaries early on is better, circling back and making sure you do that and laying out what your objective is so that when the boundaries are in danger of being crossed or bumped up against or crossed, then you can assert and say, hey, remember, like we talked about this. I get it. I understand where you're coming from, and this is our objective. Okay, good, good, good. I'm glad that's helpful. Cool. Great question. And so that's one thing I want to say about how this time functions for people is when you ask a question that's so helpful for everybody who's listening in. And your job when you're listening in isn't to try to tell the person who asked the question what they should do. you get the most out of it by saying, huh, I relate to that question. How do I relate to that question? And where can I apply this in my career, or in a relationship that I'm working on right now? And so me thinking about, and that way, whoever is asking a question, I mean, they're doing a service because it's providing the material to take the concepts that we have in emotional intelligence and this, the things I can talk about, but it's bringing it into something grounded that's more digestible. So really appreciate the two good questions we've had so far. So again, empathy helps us create a relationship where somebody is going to be more likely to take their own initiative to move alongside of us as we are working on a project, completing some task. Because if I'm just giving directives, now in the military and all kinds of places, there's ways that just giving directives and taking that and running with it is important. It's an important skill to learn how to do. In fact, I might even talk a little bit about that. It's not that you shouldn't do that. It's not that getting instructions, um, it's a great skill for somebody to be able to get instructions and to act on those and deliver. That's a really, really important thing. But if we're honest, that often doesn't happen. So we're looking at where the breakdowns are. And what we're talking about is that empathy is actually something that helps smooth those breakdowns a little bit so that forward progress can happen. Now, let's flip this around a little bit. So, what happens for me if I'm getting instructions from somebody that are saying, "Hey, you need to go do this, this, and this." And I'm like, "Oh, they don't understand how hard this is. They don't understand, what I have to work with here. And geez, I can't believe they're putting more on my plate right now." And that's the kind of the internal thing that's happening. So now to be able to reverse that and have empathy for the person who's putting more on my plate, and to be able to say, okay, what's going on with them? So I'm feeling scared and frustrated, like I'm unable to do this, or it's going to require more time on my part that I don't necessarily want to give. And I've got all these other to-dos. So one of the things to hold in this is that I am learning and growing. And as I'm given more tasks to do, and as somebody in a leadership position, an authority figure, my boss or manager or whoever, is now asking me to do more than I was doing before, or ask me to do something I don't know how to do yet, that is going to trigger anxiety. I am going to feel a certain kind of way about that. And I might even, sometimes I'll have my feelings hurt because I'm like, wait, you just asked me to do this and you didn't even acknowledge all the other stuff I did. Like, this is endless. Remember that affirmation is incredibly important. So much so that we made heart emojis and that they are so used. That's how important affirmation is. And here's the bind with this is that a good manager is often can be affirming and is affirming appropriately, recognizing where certain skill gaps are that you have been working on, and that you have, accomplished something new for yourself and can celebrate you for that and say, wow, like that was really cool how you stepped up and made that happen. Like that's wonderful affirmation. And when a manager can do that and is aware of that kind of things, great. However, a lot of managers and bosses aren't that good at that. And on top of it, it's not necessarily their job. Now, it doesn't mean that it couldn't become their job or that it wouldn't help them in their job. But in the job description, that's not their job. It's not their job to affirm me. And so if I'm expecting my boss to affirm me and they're not affirming me, then I can be setting myself up to just be walking around in a whole lot of resentment and failure. And if I can then do the emotional intelligence thing that we're talking about and go inward and recognize what I'm feeling, that I'm feeling hurt and I'm feeling anxiety, that like, oh no, they're telling me to do this stuff. I'm not getting any affirmation or acknowledgement that I've already been working hard. And like, oh wow, like, yeah, this is uncomfortable. This hurts. Wow, this brings up a lot of feelings that I have about sort of how I'm seen in the world. And if I can let myself be with that discomfort instead of blaming them and saying something like, geez, like they're a horrible manager or a horrible boss, and having side conversations with my team about like, what a pain in the ass they are. Because once I go into that realm of essentially gossiping about somebody else, it takes the humanity out of it. All right, I don't know. That's not quite the right word. It takes it. It's now putting me in a one down position even more, and it's making it like I can't do this without their affirmation, which isn't true. And on top of it, a lot of us, our window for receiving affirmation is like only this big. We haven't learned how to take in affirmation in other ways that we're not used to. So it could even be that in some ways they are affirming us. Like if you haven't figured out yet, the reward for good work is more work. So it could mean that, it's like, oh wow, they just put something else on my plate. Oh, it's because they're actually seeing me as capable and capable of figuring out how to do this and capable of delegating some of the things that I've been doing, etc. Oh, wow. So if I can start to have that shift instead of it going from, geez, they're not affirming me, they don't understand me, that kind of thing, to, oh, maybe I need to affirm myself in the ways I want to be affirmed, and I can acknowledge how I'm doing a good job and actually see that, maybe they're affirming me and it's just a new kind of affirmation. And maybe I can go to them and say, hey, um, great, I need help with delegating. Here's the thoughts that I have about who I think could handle some of these things as I'm taking on more responsibilities. What do you think? Right there now you've stepped into a mutual conversation, and it's going to be affirming for both of you. You are now affirming yourself and affirming your boss, and you're now better able to empathize with them and their challenges. So I hope that's helpful. So we've got it from both sides of how to first go in internally for you, recognize the affirmation that you're wanting, create that for yourself in one way or another, talk about it with your significant other or somebody on your team, or and build in the ability to affirm yourself for the things that you're doing and expand your affirmation window. That right there is going to have you able to be more effective. So I hope that this is all useful to you in terms of using emotional intelligence in the workplace and how to access more empathy in me so that I'm more effective with my team and the people around me. Okay, well, we are coming up on the end of the hour. I am George Miller, your host. I'm here every Wednesday at noon Central Time, and I take all questions career related. So anything from resume to interviewing to managing to strategic planning. Any questions that you have, uh, go ahead and ask them. You can type them into the comment section. You can jump in here on Zoom directly, and I will do my best to support you in your career development. There's a few things that I can share. If you have questions and things and you're not comfortable sharing here, you can always set up a 15-minute time with me. We'll throw a link to my calendar in there. A lot of times I'm able to help somebody just, affirm where they're at in the direction that they're taking. And, that call can be impactful for them to know that they're going in the direction they want. And sometimes it may lead to a conversation about coaching and a coaching relationship and what that might look like for you. As you are developing as a leader, what support do you need? Do you need a spot where you're able to think out loud, hear yourself think, and get honest feedback, get valuable criticism about where skill gaps of yours might be so that you can and we can work together for you to work through those and continue to learn and grow. So you can always set up a 15-minute time with me, and you can view videos that I'm putting on YouTube. The whole cache of these are there, as well as more focused videos on emotional intelligence. So you can take a look at my YouTube channel. Okay, well, everybody, I have a session coming up at the end of the hour, so unless anybody has any last minute questions, I'll be signing off here, and we'll be planning to see you next week. All right, everybody. Blessings. Take care. Thank you for joining in today. Remember, be aware of your feelings. Be kind to yourself about your feelings. That opens up our window of tolerance. It opens us up to be aware of more in ourselves and others. And it facilitates the conversations. It facilitates the projects that we're working on. Everything takes team playing, or most things do. So kindness towards yourself and your feelings, and that will open the doors for other people as well. All right. Thanks for joining in, everybody. Take care.